I think about where my entrepreneurial journey began, I actually think about way back when I was 13 years old, standing at the edge of a balance beam, literally staring fear down my nose every day for 10 years, from 7 to 17. And that was a place, and in the gym, those 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, whether I was on the Olympic track or after I got injured when I wasn't, where I had to deal with dedication, drive, goal orientation, teamwork, success, failure, and the whole cycle all over and over again. And most importantly, I think from that experience in my life, I gained, if nothing else, an ability to manage fear. And I think that fear management, in addition to all the other attributes I mentioned, were the seedlings of entrepreneurship when I think about my entrepreneurial journey and who I became later. But the catalyst moment in my life as an entrepreneur was actually when I was a business school student at Stanford, and I was running a wine club with some friends, and wine was a hobby and a passion. I think wine can be a wonderful window into culture and history and politics and travel and cuisine. But I was seeing something really interesting happening when my peers were tasting wine together. First, there was this, pardon the pun, but thirst for knowledge. And that thirst for knowledge was almost insatiable. This new demographic wanted to learn about wine. We wanted to learn about it from our peers. And then when brands would come to educate us, whether it was famous brands like Cake Bread Sellers or Mondavi, Pete Mondavi Jr., or Moet and Chandon, when they came to educate us, I was really astounded by how willing they were to educate us because we were the next generation of wine enthusiasts. And so there was something there. And there was something that, on a very simple front, thinking like Peter Pan, 2 years of business school went quickly, and I just didn't want that learning and that exchange to end, almost like Catalyst Week, right? It's that something that keeps, that's a never-ending exchange. And so the concept of Bottlenotes was born from those moments where I wanted to enable people to continue to learn about wine, and to continue to learn about wine in a way that was convenient and easy, just like showing up at wine tasting events at your friends' houses was convenient and easy. And so the original Bottlenotes business model was we would send you wine, here's the innovation, the Silicon Valley twist, tailored to your personal tastes using patent-pending matching technology. And that patent is still pending, and that matching technology, think Netflix or Amazon, we'd send you the wine, you'd rate it on a 5-star scale. Once you rated more wine, we'd hone our understanding of your preferences. The fancy word for that is collaborative filtering. But we would be able to send you better and better recommendations. And it all sounds pretty nice, right? Hardworking athlete, works hard, goes to a good business school, has a fun idea. So 506, raises $1 million of friends and family, and I'm thinking, okay, so here's my vision. I believe I'm doing something to educate and entertain consumers, and we're doing well by brands, helping them get access to this next generation of wine enthusiasts. I'll run hard at this for 2 or 3 years. It'll be a single or a double, to borrow my husband's baseball lingo, who's a former pro athlete himself, so we talk a lot of baseball in our house. But I think single, double, move on. That was sort of my original vision. And that is just not what happened. It was really couldn't have been further from what I expected. And there were really several reasons why. And the first reason why is that 2007 and 2008 and 2009, as we all probably remember, were very strange years macroeconomically. And that matters in any lifestyle business, that matters in any consumer-facing business. But where it really is hard is if you're a startup and you've just started, like the plane has just started to take off. And we're at a $1 million run rate. We had a couple thousand wine club members. We had some, lot of challenges with technology costs that came in twice of what was anticipated, and a back-end logistics provider that I had actually encountered at business school. It sounded great on paper, but was totally clunky. And I learned that in my time in the e-commerce world, which many people from Zappos know better than anyone, you're only as strong as your lowest common denominator in the supply chain. And if our warehouse wasn't getting things out on time and wasn't paying people on time, the wineries that we fronted them the money and then they had to cut the check to the wineries. If that wasn't all happening, no matter how much great consumer marketing we did, we weren't going to have surprised and delighted customers and happy supplier partners. That was pretty tough. And I had raised angel investment for this because there was this hangover from the first dot-com bubble where venture capitalists were really skittish about investing in the wine category. But when Lehman Brothers is going down and the stock market is tanking and people are putting everything in cash and holding on for dear life, they're not really as inclined to take that money that they were going to put into their home or another home or a car or another car or an extra vacation or their kid's college fund and give it to you, the super high-risk entrepreneur. So what happened was at the end of '08, if all that wasn't enough, which is enough, right? It's enough. But if that wasn't enough, then something even worse happened, worse than my worst fears. I, who had grown up in a democratic home, thinking democracy is good and government is good. My mom was an ambassador. I have grown up with people who are great, who are good workers and hardworking government people. And here I was in California, fish out of water, having grown up in Chicago, and doing well, I believe, as an entrepreneur by my own two hands. And these California regulators at the Alcohol Bureau of Control got a bee in their bonnet about third-party online marketing firms, because little did I know that Amazon Wines was thinking of entering the space, actually working with our same warehouse. But all the distributors in the wine world, particularly in California, were terrified that Amazon was going to come in, it was going to be a zero-sum game, and either they were going to sell the wine directly to you or you were going to go buy it at a restaurant. But it was one or the other, and if it wasn't them, they were screwed. So they lobbied the California Alcohol Bureau of Control to call into question and send out an industry advisory about third-party marketing firms, basically saying that Orbitz is okay and Expedia is okay, matching supply and demand and getting a piece of the action if you do that in travel is okay, but in wine it's verboten and it's, then they were willing to fine our winery partners for working with us, an online marketing firm, like not that terrible. Well, once that happened and that industry advisory went up, any winery that worked with us could have potentially put their winery license at risk and their whole livelihood at risk. I didn't want that for them. I didn't want that for them any more than I wanted for myself. So here I've got all these macroeconomic trends going against me, and then the regulators come in completely arbitrarily and change the rules of the game. So, if you look at it rationally, you could say to yourself, that's a pretty good story. It's a pretty unfortunate set of circumstances, but if you quit then, I don't think, and you raise the white flag, I don't think any of your investors are going to say you didn't give it your old college try and you didn't, work really hard. But something in me didn't want to quit. And maybe it was the athlete in me, maybe it was the friends and family I had raised money from and I didn't want to let them down, and the team that had worked really hard for me for 2.5 years. But I said to myself, we're doing something valuable in the marketplace. We're helping the new to intermediate wine enthusiasts. We're their trusted source of information. And they're coming to us and then being put in touch with their friends and getting great wine information. And we're helping wineries and brands get access to this next generation audience. And no one else is doing it. So what if we invert the model? And what if we say, instead of an e-commerce company where we make money when we make great recommendations and consumers choose to buy the wine we recommend from us at that point via a wine club, what if instead we think of ourselves in the value chain as more of a media company, and we can educate and entertain consumers by all the platforms and Amanda articulated before, but then in that context, it's free to consumers unless they come to our events and then they pay us for an event ticket. But ultimately, then the brands would have to start paying us to access our consumer audience via email, interactive events, social media, mobile applications, whatever. And I brought my team into the room when this decision was made, and I explained to them the world as it was changing, just as I explained it to you here now. And I said, we have two choices, folks. The choices are these. We can quit, or we can sail to a new island. We can tack. We can pivot and go forward. I'm prepared to go forward. I'm prepared to put all the money I have in my checking account in to fund this 3-month transition. I'll go out and raise money from new investors so we can make this transformation. And what I need from you are two things: true grit and faith. And if you're willing to do this, then for the 3 months we're making this transition, you got to tighten your belt, go down to minimum wage. I'll pay you back by the end of the year with interest, presuming this all works out. But what I need to know is if you're in or you're out. Because if you're in, we are rowing, and we're rowing hard with barely enough time. And if you're out, I understand my Rolodex is open to you. I'll help you find new jobs in this industry. I'll do whatever I can do. But I'm going to have barely enough food and barely enough water to get us all the way to the next island. So what I have no bandwidth for is knowing if you're in or you're out. If I'm wondering if you're going to jump, I need to know you're in. And if you're not, totally understand, but I need to know that now. So no one walked out of the room. One woman decided the next week, she didn't know if she had the stomach for it, and she started her own graphic design firm, and I helped her get a few new clients, and she and I are friends to this day. But everyone else, God bless them, tightened their belts, rode like hell. I'm proud to say that the minimum wage thing only lasted 2 months. We got them paid back 6 months later, not a year later. And really, besides their hard work and faith in me, the more important and the equally inspiring piece to me was that the decision of whether to keep going or to quit had almost nothing to do with the consumer. It had almost nothing to do with the product offering and the supplier. It had everything to do with our decision as a team to keep going. And there was one other thing that was going in our favor. I had written a book about 4 months before, and the W Hotels underwrote a book tour, and there was something there. This book tour was in 6 cities around the country, and every time we showed up with 6, for this mini around the world in 80 sips tasting and book signing, like 200 or 300 people would pop up overnight at these W's, and it surprised me. We had done events and some really sexy ones at like Christie's in New York to drive press and to get people to sign up for our wine clubs, but we had never done something on this scale. So part of that all hands was when I set out forth the new vision for the company, and I explained to them we're going to continue to educate and entertain consumers and help brands get access to this audience, but we're going to take what were cost centers, our events and our email newsletters, and we're actually going to turn them into profit centers or the business. And they kind of looked at me like I was nuts. They had been doing customer service, email marketing, sourcing, and I'm saying now we're going to be an interactive events company, amongst other things. But lo and behold, that first year, we did 3 around the country in San Francisco, New York, and Chicago. And in 2014, I'm proud to say we'll be going to 14 different markets, 500 to 1,000 consumers each, pouring, as you would expect, 80 plus wines from around the world. And the other idea was to take our email newsletter, what was originally called Bottle News, and turn it into an email newsletter called The Daily Sip. We have a partnership with Condé Nast on it now. We have a great editor, Karen McNeil. She wrote something called The Wine Bible, the most published wine book of all time. And so, I think that it's modeled after Daily Candy. And so, the good news is that, so far the journey has worked and the story is still being told, and we're still alive. We're still a lean, mean team, and we've evolved in different ways, and the press has been kind to us and all of that. But I think what I've also been really inspired by in the last 3 years, and what's helped me keep going and wanting to keep growing this business and this concept, is that every step of the way, we've had this really clear sense of purpose that we need to stay at the forefront of this industry and keep breaking ground. The journey is 1% finished, to quote Claire Mulhern from Facebook, who spoke at a conference we produced this last year called IBEV, that your work has just begun, right? And that notion has been inspiring because we've never had the luxury of resting on our laurels. We've always just had to just keep on battling it out and out-innovating our competition, and then outworking them, and out-innovating and outworking them. And then that's the other piece of the puzzle when I look back and I think about the journey so far, is it's really about one thing that one of my dear friends, Emily Melton, who's a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, said, which is the last bullet on the slide, which is you have to be present to win. You just have to be present to win. You simply cannot win a race if you're not standing there competing. And so, when I think about myself today, we can roll it, Stacey. This is a video from a couple days ago, actually yesterday morning before I got on the plane to come here. I work with a group of, I like to call them high-performance sadists. There are people who are in Silicon Valley who are range of the gamut, a lot more famous and a lot more well-known than I am, and they get out. We work with a coach named Abdul Silla. He's amazing, and he pushes us sort of past our breaking point mentally and physically and all that stuff, and these hurdles were absolutely wretched to do that morning. I had to do 20 takes to get the 7 I did. 5 of them dropped. I was telling him I was done. We were going to have to just Photoshop it. That's not a joke at all. And like I said, can we please lower him to 27 inches? He said, we're not going to lie, are we? I mean, the whole thing is, it's really this, it's the whole point, though. And the whole point is, the reason I keep doing stuff like this is to remind myself that whether it's entrepreneurship or any other obstacle in your life, it's about a choice. And it's about literal hurdles and metaphoric hurdles. It's about choosing to stare them down and jump over them and go faster than you thought you could, or not. And the difference between success and failure is literally 80% the willingness to step up to those hurdles and believe you can jump over them, and then 20% the actual execution of that goal and just digging deep, jump after jump after jump, and continuing to go. So, I think that as entrepreneurial stories from Silicon Valley go, a lot of us think of them as Facebook and Twitter and everything that's sexy and easy. And I just, wanted to share the story that I think there's this other side of Silicon Valley, and certainly this other side of entrepreneurship everywhere else, where you might be a CEO by day, but you're most likely a firefighter by night, braving fear, working your ass off, getting people to believe in you, doing a lot of the unglamorous stuff, inhaling smoke, whatever metaphor you want to use. But as long as you recognize that 90% of the battle is showing up, choosing to commit to winning and going for it, you at least have a shot.